Welcome back to the Winback Academy podcast, where we bring together clinicians, educators, and experts from across the Winback community to explore rehab, recovery, movement, and performance in the real world. I'm your host, Ramona von Leyden, PhD. Today's episode is part of our Ambassador Spotlight series. Conversations focus less on protocols and more on the people behind the practice, the experiences that shape them, the lessons they've learned, and the philosophies that continue to drive their work. Today I'm joined by Denis Donovan, physical therapist and founder of Muscle Mechanic Mobile Wellness, TPI certified golf performance specialist, Winback ambassador, and Winback field clinical lead for the East Coast. In this conversation, we talk about entrepreneurship, sports medicine, golf performance, recovery, and what it means to help people continue doing the activities they love. We also discuss the evolution of physical therapy, the growing role of recovery technology, and Denis's perspective on working with everyone from high-performing athletes to active adults looking to stay healthy and resilient. Here's my conversation with Denis. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Winback Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ramona von Leyden, PhD. Today, I'm joined by Denis Donovan, physical therapist, founder of Muscle Mechanic Mobile Wellness, TPI certified golf performance specialist, Winback ambassador, and our East Coast field clinical lead. Denis has built a unique career that combines sports medicine, golf performance, entrepreneurship, clinical education, and hands-on patient care. Whether he's helping someone recover from an injury, improve athletic performance, or stay active for life, his work is centered around helping people move better and perform at their best. So, Denis, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ramona.
Yeah, so we're going to dive right in. I think with these conversations, the starting point is always just, how did you first get into physical therapy? What was your kind of journey to the profession?
Well, I think it's very cliche, but I was the high school athlete who couldn't stay healthy. But I didn't realize I wanted to be a physical therapist until later. I spent a lot of time in physical therapy. As a high school athlete, I played football and baseball. But I went to college, a political science major, thinking I wanted to go to law school, and took one semester of pre-law classes, and I was like, this isn't for me. So yeah, I remember having a conversation with one of my uncles. It was after my first year of college, and we were out on his boat and we were fishing. And he said to me, he's like, "What are you gonna do, Dan?" I'm like, "I don't know, but it's not law." He said that he put this idea in my head. He's like, "Well, you spent a lot of time in physical therapy, why not make it a career?" I was like, I really enjoyed my time in PT. I had a passion for, being around sports, and which evolved into recovery and stuff like that. And so after that conversation, I texted the gentleman who was my physical therapist, and I said, "Hey, can I come shadow you for the rest of the summer, see if this is something I could see myself doing?" And he was nice enough to say, "Yeah, sure, come on in." And that's kind of how I realized this is what I wanted to be doing. So it was a roundabout way, but I did have a lot of experience in physical therapy because I was one of those kids who couldn't stay out of the training room.
That's I think that's probably a pretty, in some ways, a common story that you
Yeah.
had that experience. But I love that you thought the law. I think there's a lot of people that you have this idea of what you might want to do, and then you start down it and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute, this is not at all."
Yes. And that was very much my experience. I had one semester of pre-law classes and I was like, "Oh gosh, no, this is not for me."
Okay, so what sports did you play growing up?
I played football and baseball.
Football and baseball. So would you say, obviously, that those experiences, your time in the training room for sports, is what drew you towards kind of focusing on sports medicine?
Yeah, well, when I started learning so I had injuries almost every year. I had a partial tear in my elbow, a partial tear in my knee. I had a complete shoulder separation that required surgery. So I was like hurt quite a bit, but I found myself kind of fascinated in my own recovery and the own anatomy of like what was going on. And I remember those conversations that I had with my physical therapist, and being like, wanting to know more about like why I was progressing, why the exercise prescription was what it was. And it was at that point in my life, it was something that was like uniquely fascinating to me. Like I didn't really have anything at that point that really I wanted to dive into more. I was kind of like the high school student who took things very superficially, but once I started rehabbing, I wanted to know more. So that was kind of a unique experience at that point in my life.
Cool. So then down the line, what brought you, after PT school, did you work in a more traditional like PT practice before going off on your own?
Yeah, I was. I worked in an outpatient facility. I was very lucky because my first experience out of school, I was in a really awesome clinic, a very data-driven clinic where I was exposed to a lot of like really high-level equipment, very, very unique treatment philosophies and technology that I hadn't seen anywhere else. And that experience was eye-opening for me because it allowed me to see what kind of rehab could be. Um,
Mm.
so many of my clinical experiences or outpatient experiences before that had been, and I hate to say this, kind of cookie cutter approaches towards rehab. And, being a new grad in a facility that really required you to, raise the bar and kind of push the envelope of what we deemed as like the standard of care was, it really fired me up. And again, I just wanted to absorb, I wanted to learn. And that's kind of how I was exposed to Winback.
This is okay. This is an interesting point that I'd love to, because I think of our ambassadors, uh, to your credit, you're the youngest, and so the most recent grad. Would you say your experience in PT school, as you just mentioned, kind of the outpatient experience you get when you're in PT school versus what's really out there in the real world if you're getting into private practice, that it was like, oh, this is quite different. Like this is a little bit, there's more here than I thought there was that kind of led you down this more unique path.
Yes and no. I will say that. So I went to Toro University in Long Island, and I can't say enough good things about my experience at Toro. The professors there are absolute A1. The cohort that I had was incredible. I mean, some really, really bright kids I was able to learn alongside of. And the teachers really did a great job of laying a foundation for our career. And part of it is the way things are taught in PT school still has to be catered around the board's exam, right? So it's not necessarily that it's maybe the best or most innovative practice, but they have to teach you in a way that requires you to pass the board's exam. But to your point, once I got out into the field and I started practicing and seeing how things were done or seeing how things could be done, it was eye-opening for me and exciting, like eye-opening in a good way, like invigorating and stimulating, because I realized this is something I can continue to like dive deeper into, continue to push the envelope for myself and my patients. I'm someone who's very I get I hate to say, like, I get bored easily. So doing the same thing over and over and over again would drive me nuts. I need to evolve. I love change, which is I think a little funny, but yeah, so having that initial experience and seeing how quickly technology in rehabilitative medicine was evolving and seeing what was out there was really cool.
I love that. So then that leads me to my next question is where did the idea for muscle mechanic come from?
Yeah, and it's totally rooted in the kind of the foundation, how I started my career, seeing what was available to people, and then realizing that where I live in Palm Beach County, Florida, there was a market for people who wanted high level care, but in the convenience of their own homes or on their own schedules. Um, so, the first call I made when I went off on my own was to Winback because at this point in my career there had been no other modality that I had used that I've been able to use not only across a treatment continuum, but I always say like from post-op to performance I could use this. So I was able to use the device with so many patients. I kind of knew that this was the foundation of what I was going to build my mobile practice when in. Um, and the name for muscle mechanic actually is kind of from a friend who I had been treating. One summer I was back in New York, and this kid, he's one of my best friends. But anyway, he was on my treatment table, and he had shoulder pain, back pain, knee pain, and he's like, "Man, I just need a mechanic for my whole body." And I was like, "Mechanic for the whole body mechanic, muscle mechanic," and that's kind of where I got the idea from. Um, so anyway, so yeah, so that's kind of where I got the name from, but it really centered around this idea that like I identified that there was a market for people who, like I said, wanted high level care, but they wanted it on their own terms in the comfort of their own homes, and on their own schedules. And sometimes that's late at night, sometimes it's early in the morning, sometimes it's on the weekends, and that's kind of how I've built my practice.
Amazing. And this is probably a huge question, but what have you learned from running your own business?
How much time you have? Yeah,
Let's say, yeah, yeah. Obviously, going off on your own, deciding to go that is, I mean, that's a massive learning curve and a last massive learning experience. So as we'll tone that question down to obviously, as you identified, picking the modalities that you're using, picking the things that you're doing that you think are going to give you the most effective treatments for going into someone's home, because that's a very unique setting, right? You don't necessarily have the
yeah,
equipment that you would in a traditional practice. So I mean, obviously, Winback's a big part of that, and we will definitely talk about that. But just that building out like essentially, yeah, a mobile PT practice is uniquely challenging.
yeah, it was, and it was, it's been a learning experience, and it continues to be one, and that's kind of the profession, though. The whole profession's a learning experience, I'm lucky that I'm in a space now with the Winback Academy that I'm around a lot of men and women who have been in business. They've ran businesses and they've been very successful in doing so. So I'm very very fortunate that I'm able to rely on people like Grant Headley and Dr. Don DeFabio and Dr. Tucker, who have, they've been generous enough to share information with me about what it's like, the X's and O's of running a business. But it's been a learning experience, but a great one, a fun one at that. Nerve wracking at first, but I have a really good support. My wife is amazing, and she kind of gives me the confidence to go, do take these steps and take these leaps of faith. And having so between the academy people that I've been able to lean on and ask them questions and stuff, it's been a blessing. I'm in a really unique situation here. And it's been just that. It's been a learning experience. But as far as like picking what I need to do or what I need to bring with me to meet the demands of what that client or patient needs, it's largely patient specific. So I travel with my Winback, I travel with my electrotherapy devices, my needling. Sometimes it's my Normatec boots, sometimes it's lasers. It's depends on what the goal of that treatment session is. I'll say that Winback certainly gives me the most versatility compared to other modalities that I've used, and the ability to use it actively and passively, or using it actively as a progression to the passive treatment, is something that I've found very, very beneficial, both in terms of patient outcomes and building my practice. But yeah, I'm also fortunate enough that a lot of the patients that I'm working with now, they have gyms or some sort of exercise equipment available to them in their homes or their communities or their buildings. So I do travel with some very rudimentary kind of exercise equipment. Like I have some bands, some light weights, kettlebells, jump stretch bands, stuff like that. But and then my Winback and my other, modality devices. So yeah, it depends. And I have a big old backpack that I carry a lot
It's
of
like a
junk.
military grade backpack.
It actually is. It actually is a mill. It's the
It
only
has to
one.
be.
It's the only one that I've been able to fit like all of my stuff in, and then I have a carry-on size suitcase that I travel with my back four in.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super cool. So, since you brought up WinBack, obviously, uh, since the other, of course, thing that you do with WinBack and for us and for yourself is clinical education,
Mhm.
both in training people who are getting their units. So, for anybody who's listening, you might get your introductory training through Denis, or also leading our CEU courses. Right, we're about to have our first Introduction to Tech Art course in Tampa, Florida, with Denis leading, which is going to be super exciting. You help with the Ask Me Anythings, you help with the CEU webinars. Like you've really carved out a second career for yourself in clinical education. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how, as that opportunity has opened up for you, kind of like what that story was, how you came into that, how we've ended up having you as our field clinical lead. And also, what excites you about kind of that aspect of being able to teach as well as treat.
Yeah, no, that's been an amazing experience, and I've always enjoyed teaching. It was something that like, and again, it goes back to Toro where I had like a lot of really really awesome professors that I looked up to, and I was like, man, I could kind of see myself doing what they're doing, to some regard. And then I took students, as a clinical instructor when I was in the outpatient clinic, and that was always a really fun experience to me. I've always enjoyed teaching, and I do have this mindset, and it's shared with other Winback Academy educators that like, rehabilitative medicine should be collaborative and not competitive. And the more we share ideas, the more we share treatment philosophies, share best practice tips, tricks, whatever it is. I think the more we grow as a profession or as a community, and the more our patients benefit from it. So like I'm constantly looking for other ideas, and then I'm always happy to share those ideas or those success stories, whatever I've had with other people, because like that's why we got into this, right? Like we're trying to help people. Um, so that's certainly a huge part of it. And then as far as like the clinical education stuff goes, like teaching these CEU courses, like I said to you before, like I get bored easily, so having carved out this other, realm of space that I didn't necessarily see myself doing specifically, has been stimulating. It's been really fun. Laura Ramus has been such a great help and another like great mentor for me. She co-teaches a lot of those webinars with me. And she's been teaching for a very long time. So just to be able to bounce ideas off of her, again, moreover than just like the content we're teaching, but treatment philosophies and questions, about pathology and progression. It's been great, but it's always been fun for me to teach and to share, what's worked for me in the hopes that maybe it helps somebody else. But it's definitely been something overall that has continued to keep me fresh and keep me motivated.
Yeah, I love that. We're very lucky to have you. You're a fantastic teacher. It's
Thank you.
definitely there's an element that like you can learn it, but some piece of it has to be innate. Like you just gotta have to have that desire to do it. So we
It's
appreciate that
fun.
so much.
It's fun for me, and I'm a people person. Like I love like meeting and talking to new people, and it's why I kind of like my career. I meet a lot of super super interesting people from all over the country and the world, and it's fun for me. And to be able to like communicate with them, and like I said, share ideas and share different success stories. It's fires you up.
Love that. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the patients you see, and also because the other piece that you've kind of you've gotten your TPI certification, which is really special and unique to golf performance. So as you started treating athletes, like what interested you about going that route? Was it? I mean, you play golf now, and it's kind of like, oh, there's a lot of biomechanical specific things that about golf. Do you find that crossing over into your other patients and athletes, like that information?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So I think when I realized how much of a nerd I was, or one of those times in my life was when I took I moved to Florida from New York 6 or so years ago, and I started working with a lot of golfers, and I realized I loved playing golf, but I didn't know enough about the biomechanics of the golf swing. So I took the Titleist Level 1 course, which was really interesting because it broke down the golf swing in terms of like biomechanics and anatomical planes in a way that I could digest it, right? It was like way
Mm.
more beneficial for me at that point than any golf lesson I had taken because it put it in terms I could understand. Um, that's when I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then I wound up taking the level 2. At some point, I plan on going out to California and doing the level 3 with Dr. Rose. Once I get some time. But that's kind of what pushed me to it was I realized there was a gap in my knowledge, and there was something that I could potentially learn that would help the people I was working with. But then taking the course, I was like, oh, like that course took 10 strokes off my game more
Oh, wow.
so than any lesson because again I understood finally from like a biomechanical standpoint what my body should be doing during each phase of the swing. Now I'm still not a great golfer by any means, but I'm better than I was. But yeah, I do. There are some clients that I work with on golf fitness and golf performance. I would say it's probably somewhere between 20 and 30% of what I do. But most of the clientele I'm working with are, athletes, whether it be professional or, weekend warrior athletes that are just looking to either recover better, correct something that is, flared or an imbalance. They're dealing with some, wear and tear type of injuries. But that's kind of the wheelhouse I found myself in is I'm really, a one-stop shop for recovery and corrective work, keeping people going. Like the people that I work with are all people that are very, very driven. Whether they're on pickleball tours or I got some, NFL guys I see in the off season when they're in South Florida. People that are playing, on the Corn Ferry tour or just trying to do active work, live active lives, even the weekend warrior golfers. And then I do see quite a bit of just like, your regular knee replacements, rotator cuff repairs, like the nitty gritty orthopedic cases that are still fun for me to treat. So the variability in my day to day work is another thing that kind of keeps me fresh. It's not like I'm seeing all knee replacements every day or all rotator cuff repairs. I have, the golf people, I have the recovery people, I have the Ironman athletes, I have the pickleball pros, and a little bit of everything in between.
Do you think so? I think this has been a recurring theme that's come up since most of our ambassadors have some kind of movement, athletic background. Is that when you're treating these patients, athletes tend to like we're great at trying to keep moving. We're not great at recovery.
Yeah.
Right. And part of it is
Yes.
that that's kind of like what we were brought up to believe is that like you just push through the pain, like it'll, pain is weakness leaving the body, blah, blah, blah. So for
Yeah.
you dealing with professional athletes, everyday athletes, weekend athletes, like or just active people, do you have to kind of, for lack of a better way to put it, like bring people down and be like, hey, it's time to prioritize recovery. It's time to kind of think about this a little bit differently. Like pain isn't always the right answer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's a really awesome, awesome point you make. Like I learned early in my career, like you can't tell a runner to stop running. You can't
Nope.
tell a golfer to stop golfing. They're just not going to listen. So that is exactly what it's about. It's about prioritizing their recovery. It's about using things like Winback, and other, techniques or modalities that are going to accelerate that recovery to allow their bodies to heal faster so they can, train more, train harder. Same thing with my endurance athletes, like the people that are running Ironmans and marathons and things like that. They're not slowing down. They're not dialing
Yeah.
back miles, you know? So that in itself creates kind of a unique challenge, but a fun one. And okay, how can we, and sometimes it is programming, sometimes it is, hey, listen, maybe we got to log some miles on an Ultra G or something like that. Or with my golfers, like I'm talking to them about their practice sessions, right? I love these weekend warrior golfers that are like, yeah, I was at the range yesterday and I felt great, but then I went out to play and, my back was killing me. I was like, well, how many swings did you take on the range? And they're like, oh, 120 with the driver. And I'm like, how many times have you played golf where you've taken 120 swings with your driver? You got to think a large portion of your swings on the golf course, right? If you're someone who shoots in the 70s or the 80s, are going to be with your putter. So, maybe
Right.
you're taking 10 to 13 swings with the driver every day, So I try and coach people like for golf specifically, like, hey, let your practice sessions mimic your game sessions,
Mm.
your 18 hole sessions, right? And so yeah, so some of it's patient education, but again, I found that like being able to use stuff like Winback and put an emphasis on recovery helps people bounce back faster.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think that's something that definitely, yeah, we often, and when we're practicing, we don't think about the amount of repetitions that you're taking compared to an
Yeah,
average like session, game, et cetera, and how much of a toll that takes on the body. And especially as you've kind of alluded to with golf or any of these sports that have like a very tricky biomechanical setup. I mean, a golf swing, there's so many tiny little pieces to it
yeah,
that can be
and it's violent
altered.
too. It's a violent
Yeah.
swing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's yeah, I definitely believe that. It's I liked your point about it's funny because in my head when you said the thing where it's like you can't tell a runner not to run. I think we've all had that experience where you go in for an injury that's related to something like that. And in a physician or a sports medicine doc, like I remember having this conversation when I had a running injury where they were like, so could you not run? And like in your head, you're like, the athlete is going to be like, no, of course not. Like that's not an
Yeah,
option. Like I need you to give me a different option. And I think sometimes that's where the PT is so important because the physical therapist is the one who's going to be like, all right, let's see what we can do. Maybe we can change your biomechanics. We can get your gait changed so that you're not feeling that impact in those places and you're not getting
yeah,
that wear and tear that's causing your injuries.
yeah.
So it's super, super vital. Since you brought it up, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about modalities in recovery. As I think, and again, because you're one of probably the more recent grads that we have in our ambassador team, um, I think we're seeing the shift in physical therapy where modalities kind of went out of fashion and they weren't being used as frequently. And then the
Mhm.
last maybe decade, we're starting to see that swing back the other way, where the more recent grads are more excited about modalities. Maybe they've been exposed to them more. Something that you're doing for us is you're going to universities and giving lectures about tech art because that's still something that's not as well known in the modality practices in the US. So how do you think that the use of modalities really shapes your approach, especially when it comes to recovery?
Yeah, no, it's huge, and it's been fun for me to go to these university like lectures. Like Toro was one of the first schools I reached out when we decided, we wanted to kind of get the message out to students. And Dr. Voltmer, who's the director of the program there, he was all in on it. He was super excited. He's like, I love the idea. Let's get you in, and we went out and gave that lecture, and it's been really well received for the couple of universities we've gone to. Like the kids are excited about it, and I think you're right. There absolutely has been a shift because one, the literature is better substantiated, but two, people are kind of seeing that exercise and movement is still the cream of the crop, right? That's still what our profession and our practice needs to be about. But if you have things that can like we're talking about recovery, like accelerate your ability to recover so that you can do more of that stuff, you can get people out of pain so that they can have the ability to correct a movement pattern, or you have the ability to draw contractility to the right tissue so that they can correct the movement pattern. You allow people to train more efficiently. So going back to your question, I think modalities, I think people are realizing that these are really awesome tools that we can use to get people that can do something that our hands can't do, right? I always joke with people when I bring the Winback to their house for the first time, because most people haven't heard of TechCar still. And I say, listen, I got this device. Like, my hands are good, but this is going to take what we're doing to another level. And it's usually people can feel a difference within one session. And that's another thing that I think separates Winback from other modalities on the market is it's rare. Like, I do a lot of dry needling in my practice, and people respond really well to dry needling. But sometimes, like, it's not the right modality for everybody. Like, there are some people that I've, put one needle in and they're like, nope, absolutely not. Take it out. Don't even look at me with needle ever again. Whereas that's never happened when I do TechR with somebody, right? Like, usually they're like, oh, this feels nice. This feels comfortable. So yeah, I think that shift is in a good way systemic in the profession, that people are now, at least people that are continuing to raise the bar and like push the profession forward, they're seeing like, oh, okay, there is value here. There is something tangible that is going to make a palpable difference for our patients session to session, and that's been substantiated in the research.
Yeah, that's I think it's funny because there is definitely when the more traditional thought when people say physical therapy is always like, oh, that's like the physical therapist is like they like to torture you, right? There's this idea that like
PT
that
stands for
physical
pain and torture, right?
right, like that PT has to be uncomfortable and painful. And like certainly there's going to be moments where there's discomfort, but that is something that we talk about with tech art is that we have this modality that's very effective and has amazing cellular change, but it doesn't have to hurt.
Yeah.
Right? Like it can be actually really comfortable and feel really nice. And for somebody who maybe you're using it at the beginning of the session and their nervous system is jacked up because they're in so much pain and they're injured and they just need something that's going to calm them down, and having a modality that allows them to feel relief and comfort can put them into a different mindset so that they're more receptive to the other like exercises that you're doing. Or on the flip side, maybe you've gone through all those painful exercises and now it's like, okay, we're going to set you up and you're going to do some recovery and you're going to walk out of here feeling really good. It's just a big plus, I think.
No, absolutely. There's nothing that fires me up more than when you take someone who they are experiencing a movement that was previously painful, and then all of a sudden they do the same movement, whether it's with the Takar running or immediately after, and they're like, oh, that feels different. And they give you this look like, wow, like that. And that's been something I see, pretty frequently when I'm doing these tech art treatments, right? We can get people out of pain. And I'm talking like even people who've been in chronic pain, like that can't bend down to pick something up off the floor, right? And all of a sudden I strap the wind back to them. I'm like, hey, listen, let's just practice hinging at our waist, right? Something simple, and all of a sudden it feels different. And you instill this like very, very small bit of confidence in someone. It's like, oh, maybe it doesn't need to be like this forever. And
Right.
that's huge. That does so much for people's mentals. Like, if you can allow someone to, if you give someone hope, I mean, what's better than that?
Right, absolutely. You mentioned this very early on in our conversation about how you first discovered Winback, but I'd be curious, when you saw it at the practice that you were working at, and then when
Mhm.
you left, and you said the Winback was like the first group that you reached out to as you were going off on your own. Why? Like, why Winback? Why wasn't it something else? Well, what about it? What about Winback? You were like, oh, that's the thing. That's the one. If there's one piece I need in my practice, it's that.
Yeah, and that's like I said, I'm not being dramatic when I said Winback was the first call I made. I'm like, hey, I need to get one of these devices. And it was a couple of things, primarily versatility, right? Like, if there was going to be one thing that I could use for a large span of patients that I was going to be working with. Like, I knew the wheelhouse. I wanted to build this mobile practice centered around recovery and stuff like that. The Winback was going to be my best bet. And So that's the first thing. The second thing is, the comfort level, the patient experience. I'd had so much success treating with it. Like I've used other modalities with really good success. Like I said, shockwave, dry needling, laser, like all those things are great. Just me personally, I had a lot more success utilizing the Winback, and I think when you look at Winback compared to other TechR devices that are on the market, forget the high EMS stuff, which is a whole nother ballpark. The bracelets, which are also unique to Winback, the high tens, which is also unique to Winback. Just taking the TechR itself, the ability to modulate the current to address not only tissues of different depth but different composition is unique, So it gave me versatility not only across the treatment continuum, not only across like multiple different pathologies, but like even within the same person, if I wanted to address, superficial muscle versus deep muscle, if I wanted to address superficial bone or tendon, ligament, cartilage versus deep bone, tendon, ligament, or cartilage, this was going to cover such a wide range of bases for me. And again, and starting at the foundation, starting at the cells, and promoting cell proliferation, promoting cellular healing and cell metabolism. All these things together are why, I kind of chose to build my practice around Winback and tech art therapy.
I love that. And then you mentioned it because obviously you do dry needling, but I'm curious because I think that's where the field is going. Is this is modality stacking, is how
Mhm.
we combine modalities. So what do you think? I mean, obviously Winback, yes, unique in the tech space that we also already are modality stacking within the machine itself because you have high
Yep.
EMS and you have Winback. But outside of that, what are you using like with your dry needling? Are you using Winback with it? Are you modality stacking it with that? Are there other things that you're modality stacking in your with your approaches?
Yeah, awesome question. And I do this with dry needling, and when I was in the outpatient facility that I had access to a shockwave, I was stacking the shockwave as well. And I found similarly with both modalities. So when I prep the tissue with the CET current, the capacitive current, over the area I'm going to be dry needling, let's take like the upper traps just for argument's sake here. Um, I find that two things happen. It allows me to needle more aggressively, and the patient is less uncomfortable during and after the treatment. So it allows me to, do a little bit more needle manipulation, whether it's
Hmm.
pistoning or coning. And it allows me to maybe do a couple of extra more needles because we're able to like calm the nervous system, like that superficial CET current feels so nice and so calming. That's typically the stack I use is I'll prep the tissue with the CET current for 5 to 8 minutes depending on the area of the body I'm going to be needling. I'll follow that up with needling, and then I'll either I'll come in with or it's just using the RET. Sometimes it's with the pushback to try and kind of flush things out. But the goal is blood flow. The goal is trying to draw fresh oxygenated blood flow to that tissue. And when you combine like the dry needling with the electrotherapy plus then the TechR after, you're really able to deliver a lot of good stuff to the tissue in question. So yeah, and I had the same experience with Shockwave when I was stacking Shockwave with TechR. I would kind of run the RET current, but Shockwave in between.
Mhm.
And it was the same thing. I was actually treating myself for a stress fracture in my foot at the time. And I noticed a difference. Like I knew the Shockwave would be good for it, but I barely could tolerate it while I was doing the shockwave alone. When I stacked the modalities and I ran the RET current and then shockwaved in between, it allowed me to tolerate the treatment substantially better. I mean, it was like an 8 out of a 10 was like now a 4 out of a 10. Um, and I got better much quicker,
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, yeah, you've kind of identified how you can, again, make it a more comfortable treatment while also making the treatments more effective for each other. I think that's super, it's powerful. As I said, I think that's where, even from the literature, as you kind of alluded to earlier, that sometimes we don't see changes in the field until the literature starts to kind of show
Yeah.
it. And that's where the literature is moving at the moment. There's this kind of, oh, how do we put these modalities together? These different, especially when you're talking about energies, these different, ways of manipulating tissue, ways of working with energetic pieces that allow the tissue to be more open, to allow for faster change in the tissue that will get you to that recovery point, more efficiently.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, I think it goes back to your point before, like we're seeing this shift in modalities, where people are starting to say, oh, maybe modalities aren't the worst thing in the world. And part of that, and this is a whole nother, TED talk, but it's not letting insurance dictate, what
Yeah.
we're gonna do with our patients. But we could save that for another time.
Well, actually, no, I think that perfectly leads me into, I think that's a two-part question, which is, I think one reason that we're seeing modalities being more more accepted and more enthusiastically accepted is that people are doing more movement with modalities. I think for the longest time, and also you kind of spoke to this, but with the insurance model, a lot of these modalities tied payments are tied to passive modality, right?
Yep.
And so, as you look towards the future of PT and like where this treatment type is heading, where sports medicine is heading, what excites you the most about it? Is it, seeing how we've changed the approaches where we're like, no, there's no reason that you like, I think before it was like you came in, you do your exercises, and then you get set up on your modalities afterwards, and you just passively take in a red light or e-stim or something like that. And that's not the treatment protocol anymore. And it's hard for, the billing factor because there's not there, that's a changing landscape. But like,
Yep.
what excites you about that? What's, exciting to you about the future of PT and where we're heading?
Well, a couple of things, and I think one, it starts culturally. I think over the last like couple of years, we're kind of seeing the shift, like just in like the general population towards like biohacking. It's like
Yeah.
I mean, it's a kind of a buzzword, but like I see it all the time. It's all over my Instagram feed. So I think people are now seeing that there are things that could help them, not only live longer, but play their sport longer or recover faster or, train harder. And people are getting excited about that and people are willing to pay for it. But going back to your specific question, I love coupling the win back with movement. I do it so much, and I find that, and this is when I teach this and I'm educating people on it, like during the onboarding processes, like you get just such a better bang for your buck when you're doing active movement with TechR because the frequency works on these principles of resistance. So anything we're doing to change the resistance of the target tissue is going to make our treatment more precise, more direct, more focused, right? So like the example I love to give is like when I have these rotator cuff repairs and I can get the current running through the shoulder, but having them start even just with like multi-angle isometrics, I know as they put a contraction on each part of the shoulder, they're drawing energy to it, right? And then
Mhm.
like you said, that now is a billable code, but you're getting a enhanced cellular benefit at the target tissue you want to deliver that energy to. As far as like the way the profession's going, I see this when I go to the universities, like there is a shift and it starts with the professors, obviously, which is really awesome to see. Like I've seen this at Toro, I've seen it at the University of Miami, I've seen it at a bunch of different places where they're starting to show these modalities like shockwave and TechR and laser and show the benefit not only across a treatment continuum, but even as far as like just like an active recovery type
Right.
of treatment. So I think is as like a group of people, who are now starting to see whether it's trendy, for the right reasons or not. Like people are starting to get more excited about, I think, their health, their longevity, and Takar fits so nicely into that because again, we're talking about the cells. We're talking about, you know,
Right.
helping to proliferate healthy cellular tissue. So that's why I really think this modality has a place not only in rehab and sports medicine, but just day-to-day life.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there is definitely, there's good and bad to be said about the access that everybody has to information at this point. Um, but I think one positive is that people are taking more ownership of their health journey.
Hmm.
They're more invested in it. They're learning about things, and as I said, it's not always the best, depending on what your sources are. But for the most part, people are just there. I think there was, probably let's say 40, 50 years ago, you go to the doctor tells you what's wrong with your body or what you need to be doing to get back to health. And you don't really have another resource to go and find out more information and understand that for yourself. And I think even just the way the information is delivered, people are just, yeah, they're more invested, they're more excited. And modalities have changed where there are things you can be doing at home, that you can be supplementing your treatments, your recoveries that weren't available, whether it was because they cost so much in the old days. Now things are definitely like the price point comes down as the tech gets better and better. So yeah, and then even this, like mobile PT didn't exist, right? Like you didn't have people coming out to your house and like being able to treat you in the home. And part of it was like access. Again, how would people know to find you? Right now we have, social media can be beneficial for that. It can help. So it's definitely like we've created. I also am very excited. I think the health landscape is shifting in a positive way because the more that people are learning about their bodies, it challenges their providers to give better care,
Absolutely. And it's
right?
more
Because
than
people are
just
asking questions.
yeah, and it's more than just recovery. It's nutrition, it's sleep, it's so many things, But and I think that's like I said for better. I think it's been like a cultural shift, kind of, where we're more conscious of our own recoveries. Like how many patients that I'm seeing now are wearing like the Whoop bands or the Aura rings. Their nutrition is more dialed in. They're more aware of like processed foods and seed oils. Where when I was younger, there was really not much of a thought of that.
Yeah.
So I think all of this, when you look at it, like you said, like this whole health landscape is shifting in a positive way, and I think Tekar, fits into that because again, we're starting at the foundation, we're starting at the cells.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to move into a couple rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And so a question I've been asking all of the ambassadors, which I really like, and I, uh, it, if you need a second to think about it, we can do another one. But what's one rehab hill you'll die on? Like maybe it's a little controversial, but it's something that you're like, this is something I believe so strongly in.
I think is what I said before, and it's that rehabilitative medicine should be collaborative, not competitive.
Oh, I
You
like
know,
that. Okay.
and that's a hill I'll certainly die on. There are people out there that like to keep things close to their chest. I am not one of them, and I'm grateful for the academy because there's a whole group of practitioners here that are kind of share the mindset that I have. Like let's talk. Let's exchange ideas. Let's challenge each other, and let's better understand why the things we're doing work.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, great segue into just a little bit about our academy, I think, is that, as you said, I think for you, the academy we have at Winback is pretty unique in the space, right? It's basically a network of clinicians who are using the technology, but that's not really what it's about ultimately. It's about networking and meeting like-minded clinicians who are thinking outside the box, that are doing things a little differently, that are being, progressive and innovative with their practices and having access to that. I mean, as a young PT, that must be awesome for you. But I think in general, even for the most seasoned PTs, right? You mentioned a couple like, well, I hate to say it that way because it sounds like I'm calling them old, but I'm not. But like the Don DeFabios or the Laura Ramuses who've been in this field for decades, and they have so much knowledge and they're very innovative and they're very unique in their space, but like they can also learn from someone like you, someone who's just out of PT school, who's bringing these fresh ideas in. And so I think there's that collaborative piece of what the Winback Academy is so vital to its ecosystem.
I couldn't agree with you more, and everything you said is so true. It's been like such an amazing experience for me to have people like that, not only as a business owner, but as a just as a clinician to bounce ideas off of and talk through things. But and it's also humbling, when someone like them comes to me with a question, says, "Hey, what do you think about this?"
Yeah.
That fires me up. So it's been a really unique space I found myself in. I consider myself to be very, very lucky. It's not something I saw myself doing, 7 years out of school, but here we are. I'm very fortunate.
I love that. Okay, final question. What are you most excited about right now? Whether it's professionally or personally, just something that's really lighting you up.
Um, Professionally, it's growth. Growth excites me, and it's kind of like a microcosm of everything we're talking about, like continuing to like drive the profession forward, but like drive our careers forward, drive my career forward, my business forward. Each year that I've had my mobile practice, I've seen my clientele grow slowly, steadily, and organically, and it excites me. And it excites me every time I can go into someone's house for the first time and I tell them, hey, listen, I got something. I know you might be in a little bit of discomfort or you're working through X, Y, or Z, but I have something that, there's no guarantees in life except death and taxes, but pretty sure this is going to make you feel at least a little bit better or you'll notice a difference. And they're like, this is actually a really funny story. So I met this guy this year who was referred to me by another client, big golfer, and he plays a lot of, amateur tour events and stuff like that. But he's been trying to put off a hip replacement. And we worked together twice a week for the whole season. He was down in Florida. And at our last session before he headed back north, we were able to get him pretty much out of pain. And he's at least going to, a hip replacement is still on his horizon, probably sometime down the road. But he got through this whole season. He played in every tournament he wanted. He won 2 separate club championships. And his wife said to me, the last session, she's like, Dennis, I'm not going to lie to you. When you showed up with that big old device, and laid it out on our in our living room and said, yeah, this is going to help make you feel better. She's like, I was very skeptical. I kind of thought you were a quack. But it clearly worked because you clearly made such a difference for my husband. And, he was able to not only play golf the whole season, but play at a really, really high level. So that, you hear stuff like that and it just, that's the kind of stuff that motivates you, keeps you going, and it's exciting. But we did have a good laugh about that.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good story.
Yeah.
Okay, so quickly, as we're coming to a close, I want to make sure that if somebody is looking for you, wants to find out more information, they know where to go. So can you give us socials, website, any other information on how to find Dennis Donovan, how to find Muscle Mechanic?
Yeah, so you can find me through Google, Muscle Mechanic Mobile Wellness. I'm based in Palm Beach County, Florida, but I service pretty much, from Boca to Jupiter and west as far as Wellington. So I cover a wide area. If you go to my Instagram page, it's Denny underscore DPT. All my contact information is there, my email, my phone number. So feel free, DM me, email me. You could text me, whatever is the easiest way. I really enjoy chopping it up about TechR and just about rehab in general. And I have people that I've done trainings for, a year or two ago that still reach out to me via text or email. And they're like, hey, I got a random question about this, or I had this patient walk in with X, Y, and Z. What do you think about it? So I really enjoy it. I love those conversations. Or if you're interested in, having some, mobile recovery or mobile physical therapy sessions in your home, connect with me through Instagram. It's probably the best way.
I love that. Thank you so much. And yeah, as I said, you'll probably, if you're, getting your Winback device or you have it, you've probably encountered Dennis either whether it's on our CE webinars or as a trainer on our AMA panel. at a live course like Dennis is, probably they're becoming the face of our education program
Oh
at this
gosh,
point.
that's a lot of pressure.
So Dennis, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story and your perspective. I think conversations like this highlight something that sits at like the heart of great PT. It's helping people continue to do the things they love, whether that's competing at the high level, playing a better round of golf, or simply just staying active and healthy throughout their lives, and sharing that knowledge amongst clinicians to really move the practice and people's health forward. So thank you again. And thank you to everyone
Thank you,
listening.
Ramona.
Yeah, of course. Thank you to everyone listening to this episode of the Winback Academy podcast.